Can we make new highs if tech doesn't resume its leadership role in anywhere close to the degree that it had?
As long as tech is a market perform, if tech actually declines, that's going to be hard for the rest of the S&P 500 to compensate. But what we've seen so far, including days like NVIDIA and Tesla recently, is that that tech is actually holding its own, but other stocks are starting to show catalysts and signs of life.
Yeah. What about the broadening trade? I mean, look, you look at the Russell, your big call, of course. Week to date's down more than 1%. Really hasn't done much at all. I kept hearing, hey, you got to wait till the Fed cuts. Then you go into the Russell. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, Russell had a big week last week. It's some profit taking now. But I think that there's, this is what bottoms look like. I don't think bottoms are straight up. I know in 2021, energy was bottoming, and it was also very choppy, but eventually made not only new highs, but then basically had a blistering gain in 2020, in the year following. So I think that's a multi-year start for the Russell. It feels choppy, but we're still near all-time highs, and there's a big fundamental case to own small caps.
And you're still not necessarily sticking with the 50% up for small caps, but you still think they could have a huge move because they tend to move quickly.
That's right. I think what investors have to remember is small caps have been out of favor a long time, and they are known for having explosive rallies that are not abnormal. So last year was a 27% rally over really 20 trading days. I think we could see something very big between now and year end. I was hoping it would be after the Fed started the rate easing cycle, but maybe it really has to happen after Election Day. But are the fundamentals getting stronger for small caps? Absolutely, because interest rates are falling, merger activity likely picks up, and the median PE of a Russell 2000 stock is 10 times, 10.7 times. I mean, that's not demanding, especially if we're trying to be sensitive to valuation.
All right, we'll leave it there. NVIDIA adding to yesterday's gains. It's back above $3 trillion in market cap as we speak. There's the 2% move today. Meta's also higher, as we just told you, on the heels of its Connect conference. Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, all down today. Joining me now to help navigate the tech story with earnings just weeks away now, the Dean of Valuations, Aswath Damodaran, NYU's Stern School of Business. Good to see you again. Welcome back.
Hi, Scott. Glad to be back.
When you look at the multiples of the Mag 7, what do you see today?
I see the fact that these are the companies everybody wants to flock to. But in the last few months, we've had reminders with each of these companies about their weakest links. With NVIDIA, it was around the earnings announcement, which is you saw how high expectations have been set, and what looked like a good earnings report turned out to be a disappointment. With Apple, we've lived from upgrade to upgrade now, 16 upgrades, and I don't know why we're surprised. One upgrade measures up to expectation, the next one doesn't. With Google, we're still waiting for the next big business. They still make so much of their money from the search box. So much as these companies have been winners, they also have weak spots. And I think in the last few months, you see those weak spots sometimes highlighted, which explains why on any given day, 2 of them are up and 2 of them are down. It's the nature of the beast.
But are you suggesting that, let's talk specifically NVIDIA, Apple, Alphabet, are you saying they're overvalued currently?
I think that, rather than overvalued or undervalued, let's talk about investing odds. If investing is a game of odds, with NVIDIA, the odds are against you because of how high a price you're paying. With Apple, the odds might be even odds. With Alphabet and Meta, I think the odds are still with you because to the extent that these companies can pull off something outside their core businesses, you're going to get the bonus from that. So rather than think undervalued or overvalued, I think in terms of investing odds, and in terms of investing odds, I think the worst odds are with NVIDIA. The best odds might be with the companies that have, at that moment at least, are the companies that are not in the favored group.
It's really interesting that you suggest the worst odds are with NVIDIA, just given what we've heard even...
As an investor, as a trader, I would reverse the whole thing because it's all about momentum. It's got nothing to do with fundamentals. It's got nothing to do with, what the business looks like. NVIDIA is the perfect momentum play in either direction. If you're a trader, I can see why NVIDIA is going to be where you're going. But as an investor, I think the worst odds are with NVIDIA.
Well, but I want to address it as an investment to make because at 34 times it's cheaper than it has been for certain. Secondly, we've heard from Jensen Huang recently, within even the last couple of weeks about the great demand that the company continues to see. They have, by all accounts, what many would suggest to be not just a first mover advantage, but in fact a moat. because of their installed base, much like we talk about Apple having. So how does that all factor in, though?
Let me concede all of those. It's an amazing company going after a big market that it's going to dominate because it has immense moats. But that would mean that you would need $1 trillion in revenues and 70% margins to be delivered 10 years from now. Reverse engineering from the $3 trillion market cap. So even if you took every word that Jensen Huang takes as the truth and you built it in, I still have a tough time getting to $3 trillion. I mean, this is a company that, if you look at the current numbers, has to have immense growth and maintain 70% operating margins to deliver what you paid already upfront as a price. That's what I mean about investing odds being, against you. You price this company to be the most amazing company of all time. Where's the upside left? If it's just amazing rather than the most amazing company, that's a disappointment. So I think this is something you're going to see the back and forth on in terms of expectations, but the expectations at some point have to get reset so the company can actually deliver on those numbers.
Did you sell any of your own shares?
I sold half, to the extent that I did it, a year ago. It might be due for another half to be sold at some point in time. But the last time I valued it was right after the earnings report. So least overvalued it looked since the AI boom started. So in a sense, if I were going to sell it 3 months ago, 4 months ago, when it hit 136, it would have been the time to do it. So I'm watching the price, and if it triggers enough of an overvaluation, then perhaps it's time to get rid of another half of whatever half I've left. So that's something I'm open to doing.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, the semis, I think the stocks was up 1.3% roughly. You had a pretty good day for NVIDIA. I believe you're getting Micron results fairly
after the close.
After the close. How do you read that, Mike, in terms of one day we care and the next day we kind of don't? I mean, again, for the part of the market that for much of the year was the driving force.
Sure. I mostly read it as, and this sounds really deterministic, but the market has kind of decided that we're comfortable with these levels. You don't have aggressive selling at S&P 57 and change just yet. And so on a given day, if the macro cooperates, if we have to rely on the handful of semi-stocks that look like they're relatively oversold, you got this headline out of, not even a headline, just a story that Jensen Huang maybe is going to slow his sale plan.
Yeah.
Or stop it for now. That shouldn't really matter. It wasn't really a huge swing factor in terms of the value of the stock on offer for NVIDIA. But nonetheless, it was a pretty good excuse for that to work. I think it's much more about, on a given day, it's either banks and small caps working or it's the Magnificent Seven. Banks and small caps working really relies on soft landing and Fed cutting rates. The rest of it just relies on the mood about, the long-term secular growth story. Interesting today is the markets again being held up by NVIDIA. And the related,
today?
scrappy
I don't know what day of the week it is, Mike, but I do know the market's been held up by NVIDIA for about 2 years.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. Since the end of the second quarter, since June 30th, NVIDIA's flat. The equal-weighted S&P is up 8%. So the rest of the market has come around to doing what everybody was calling for it to do, which is broaden out since then. Now, you do wonder if NVIDIA now is getting a little bit of respite here. It's kind of churned around these same levels. It's around the mid-120s. This seems like, you see that chart right there, it could finally break this pattern of having, kind of lower peaks. We'll see. That, to me, is what the market is clinging to today to try and keep from a broader pullback, because most stocks are down today.
Speaking of AI, UBS is highlighting some major headwinds hitting active managers. According to the firm, large cap managers have 4.4% exposure to NVIDIA, despite the chipmaker accounting for 6.6% of the S&P 500. In other words, that's the biggest underweight position ever in NVIDIA, causing managers to underperform by about 130 basis points this year.
All right, I hope you're all doing well today. The S&P finished the day down by about 0.2%, while NVIDIA finished the day up nearly 2.2%. NVIDIA was also trading slightly higher in after-hours trading following the release of Micron's earnings. Remember that Micron's high-bandwidth memory solutions are used in NVIDIA's AI chips. And so, if Micron is doing well, that bodes well for NVIDIA. Micron beat consensus estimates on both the top and bottom lines and delivered 93% year-over-year revenue growth for the quarter. Micron's president attributes this growth to robust AI demand driving a strong ramp for Micron's data center center, and high bandwidth memory products. This is good news for NVIDIA. Now looking at NVIDIA's chart on the daily time frame, we can see that today we broke above this resistance trend line. That is good news. At the same time, we are now in overbought territory on the 4-hour time frame, so that is something to be aware of. I'm curious to see how this plays out over the next few trading days. This week we got news Jensen Huang has completed his scheduled sale of shares, and now we have Micron earnings. Both of these events bode well for NVIDIA. Looking ahead, I want to remind you of some events on NVIDIA's calendar. Jensen Huang is scheduled to speak this Friday in DC at 10 a.m. Eastern. Then Jensen is scheduled to speak in India on October 24th. And later Jensen is scheduled to speak in Japan on November 13th. Now looking ahead, as I've been saying a lot recently, I am cautious about adding to NVIDIA at least until early October/late November for multiple reasons. Of course, there is an election which I expect to lead to market volatility. October is historically the month in which the stock market finds a bottom before trading higher into year-end. And I'm also thinking about the cycle NVIDIA typically moves in between earnings. With all of these factors in mind, it is possible that we could see NVIDIA trade lower into late October/early November. On that note, I want to clarify something really quick. This oversimplified graphic that I've been sharing recently is of course oversimplified. And I'm just trying to communicate the underlying concept that attention surrounding NVIDIA and subsequently NVIDIA's share price typically moves in cycles in between earnings reports. This pattern has already taken place twice this year, with NVIDIA reaching a relative low about 3 to 5 weeks prior to the company's next earnings report. Now hear me well, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't trade NVIDIA around earnings. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if this cycle repeats itself as it already is twice this year, then we could potentially get a better entry point on NVIDIA sometime in late October/early November. Of course, patterns tend to repeat themselves, but they do not always have to. And of course, I do not know what the future holds, and I could be completely wrong. But considering the seasonality of October for the stock market, considering the upcoming election, and considering the cycle NVIDIA typically moves in between earnings reports, I am personally cautious about adding to NVIDIA until we get to late October/early November. That is my personal opinion, and it is completely fine if you have a different opinion than I do. Now looking ahead from a long-term perspective, I am bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA as hyperscalers like Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Google, and others all increase their CapEx spending on AI by billions of dollars. The hyperscalers must invest in AI infrastructure now, or else they will be left behind. And we have yet to see any signs of slowing CapEx spending from the hyperscalers. In fact, it appears to be the opposite as they increase CapEx by billions of dollars. Blackwell is on the horizon and is expected to begin shipping in Q4. And Blackwell is an entire platform. It's not just a chip, and this presents a massive revenue opportunity for NVIDIA. I would not be surprised if NVIDIA doubles over the next 2 years given the company's current growth trajectory and upcoming product cycles. The main two risks I see to this investment is if one of the hyperscalers were to reduce CapEx, or if something were to happen regarding geopolitics surrounding Taiwan. But as long as neither of those two things happen, then I think NVIDIA should be just fine for at least the next couple of years. At least that's how I see it. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.